Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Lamed Hey. We are at the Mishnah at the top of Lamed Hey, so it's a great place to start. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Really no need to go over much in order to jump in. So let's just do that. Our Mishnah is going to present five cases in which witnesses would not be considered to have violated the prohibition of Shvuas Ha'edus. And let's take a look and we'll try and figure out what the reasons are for each of them. So, case number one. Mashbia ani aleichem, I'm making you to swear. Im lo sabo uvisiyuduni, if you don't come and testify for me. Sha'amar ish ploni litain lima zuz. That Stan was going to said that he was going to give me $200. Now, the fact that Stan says that he's going to give me $200, what does that actually do? That's just a gift. He doesn't have to do it. He can change his mind. Let's take a look at Rashi. Well, let's finish it up. V'lo nasan, and he didn't give it to me. Hooray, elu peturim. These witnesses are exempt. She'ein chayivin ella al tvias mamon kepikadon. That the only time you're going to be liable is when the claim is like money, such as in a deposit, meaning it's money that I'm owed. I'm not owed anything by Stan. And so as a result, if Stan says he wants to give me $200 and then changes his mind, that's okay. And so as a result, the witnesses to that statement, even though they're swearing falsely in saying that they don't know anything about it, it is not a Shvuas Ha'edus swearing falsely because they are, they are just because there's no definitive monetary claim. And again, let's take a look at the top Rashi on Lamed Hayim and Aleph in the Mishnah. Elal tvias mamon kepikadon sheilu heiduhu hayu mechayvin oto mamon. That the point is in a pikadon case, in a case of a deposit, if they testify, well, then they will make the holder of the deposit liable for money payments. Aval but when it comes to Stan, im heiduhu lo hayamechuyev. If they testify, Stan's not liable. Shahaya Yakol Lomar Chazarni B. Because he could say, I changed my mind. I decided I didn't want to do it. Okay. So that was case number one. Case number two, Mashbiani Alechem, Kishateuli Edus, that I say to the witnesses, listen, I know that I haven't lent out the money yet. But when I lend out the money, I am making you swear that you're going to come and testify for me. And they say something to the effect of, no, and you're going to come and testify for me. And they say, even though they swore and they later became aware of the testimony and they didn't come and testify, Hare elu peturim. They are not liable. Because which came first? The oath came before the opportunity to testify. So what does it mean that they aren't actually swearing an oath regarding testimony at the time that they have it? And we'll prove this in the Gemara. Amad bevesa knesses v'amar. Now, third case. All right. So again, case number one, it has to be a true debt. Case number two, it has to be that you already know about the facts before I make you swear. Case number three, I stand up. Again, I'm the claimant. I stand up in shul and I say, V'amar, Mashbia ani alechem. I'm making you swear. She'im atem yodim li edus v'tavo v'siyuduni. That if you no testimony for me, you're going to come and testify. Hare elu peturin. The entire shul is exempt. Okay, because and we will see this in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to explain this. You need to specify the people to whom you're talking. Okay, it could be more than two people that you're talking to, but you have to specify them. Amr l'shnayim. Fourth case, if I say to two people, Mashbi'ani aleichem, I'm making you swear. Ish ploni uploni, you too. She'im atem yodim liyedus, that if you know testimony for me, shetavo v'tiyuduni, that you need to come and testify. Shvuah, and they say, yes, we're taking an oath. She'ein anu yodim l'cha edus, we don't know any testimony. V'heim yodin ale lo edus, but they really do know testimony. But aid mipi aid. But the people only know it from hearsay. They only have heard other people talking. So they don't have any direct knowledge. So Osha Haya Eka Mehen Karav puzzle. Or they have the direct knowledge, but one of them is a relative or otherwise an invalid witness. Maybe they engaged in gambling or some other prohibited behavior that makes them ineligible. Hare elu peturim. They are going to be exempt because, again, we need the people to be able to testify and make Stan liable if my claim is against Stan. So as a result, that's the fourth case that isn't going to work. Fifth case. So again, 5 cases in our Mishnah. Shalach biyad abdo. If you send your slave, if I send my slave to go and get the witnesses. Osha Amar Lahem Hanitba, or for some reason, Stan goes to the witnesses and says, listen, Mashbiani Alechem, I'm making you swear, She'im Atem Yodim Lo Edus, that if you know testimony for David, Shetavo v'tiyudu, you need to come and testify for him. So, and then they go ahead and swear, and then it turns out that their oath was false. Hare elu peturim, they are exempt. I need to be the one. I'm the claimant. I need to be the one to tell the witnesses that I want them to come and testify. And only then will they be liable for Shevuot Ha'edus. So 5 different principles. It's got to be a definitive money claim. It's got to be about testimony that they already know about. I've got to specify the people that I'm talking to. I can't just talk to the world and have them listen. It needs to be valid witnesses that could actually testify, meaning that their knowledge needs to be good knowledge and their nature needs to be good nature. And then finally, I need to be the one to make them swear because I'm the claimant. It can't be my agent, and it can't be it can't be my slave, and it can't be some other party to the litigation. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to go through each of the 5 cases and explain and support them. So as we pick up with the Gemara, again, 1, 2, 3, 6 lines down in the medium wide lines on Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. Tan Rabbanan Mashbiyan Elechem Im Lo Savo V'Siyuduni She'amar Ish Ploni Litain Li Masayim Zuz V'Lo Nasan. So again, the case is exactly the first case of our Mishnah, that I try and get 2 witnesses who heard Stan say that he was going to give me a present of $200 and that they should come and testify. So Yakal Yehu Chayavin, one might have thought that they would be liable for swearing falsely. Talmud Lomar Techata L'Gzeira Shava, that we have a Gzeira Shava of Techata in connection with the Shevuot Ha'edus and in connection with the Shevuot HaPikadon. So with respect to the oath of testimony and the oath of a deposit. So Nemar kan Techata v'Nemar Lahalan Techata. It says in both cases the word Techata. Malahalan b'Tvias Mamon v'Yeshlo. Just as the other case, it's money that is a monetary claim, and he has the money that he owes. It's got to be a true monetary claim. Can't be something where Stan can just escape by saying I changed my mind. Okay, so that's case number 1. Case number 2 in our Mishnah, now explained and cited for the proof text for our Gemara, again citing another brisa. Each of these cases we're going to cite a brisa. So Mashbiani Aleichem Kisheteidu Li Edus. Again, I say that I'm going to, quoting the language from the Mishnah, I'm going to have you I'm having you swear now that when you become aware of the knowledge for the testimony, you'll come and testify for me. So Tana Rabbana Mashbiani Aleichem Kisheteidu Li Edus. Shetavo v'tiyuduni. So again, I'm going to make you swear that when you know testimony, you're going to come and testify for me. Yachol Yehu Chayavin. I might have thought that they would still be liable. Talmud Lomar V'Sham'a Kol Allah V'Hu Aid O Ra'ah O Yada. So the first pasuk in the fifth parak of Vayikra that is going to serve as one of the key elements of this prohibition of the oath of testimony. So we say that specifically the words "v'hu aid" and then that v'shama kol Allah, he hears the voice of the requirement of the curse. Allah can mean a number of different things. We're going to see that over the course of the next 2 days as well. But that he says that wording, and the point is v'hu aid mishikadma edus l'shvua. He already knows about the testimony before he's being told to swear. Below shikadma shvua le'edus, and not where the oath comes before the testimony. As Rashi explains, v'hu aid, last words on the last of the wide lines at the top of Rashi. Shahaya aid b'ota shah. The point is that he's already a witness at the time that you're trying to get him to swear. That's the situation where you're going to be liable. So we've proven now the second case, that it has to be that the oath comes after the knowledge. Now the third case, where we stand in the basic, where I stand in the basic, and I say that I'm going to make you swear, and I don't specify the people. So Amar Shmuel, afilu edav beinein, even if the witnesses are right there, we're going to see. Well, Pshita, it's obvious if the witnesses aren't actually there, then nobody's swearing falsely that they don't know anything. No, lo tzricha dekoy ilavayu. No, it's where the witnesses were literally right next to me. And you might have thought that when I was talking to when I really was just talking to these two people, to A and B, who are going to be my two witnesses. But because I didn't use any language of specificity, so as a result, it ended up being that I was talking to the entire shul, and even though these two people were right in front of me, it's not considered as if I made them specifically swear. So Ma'odetema, Commander Amr Lahudami. I might have thought that if they were standing right next to me, it would be just like I talked to them directly. Kamash Malan, not so. So Tanya Nami Hachim, we've got a brisa to support Shmuel. Ra'asiyah shel b'nei Adam omdin. If you see a group of people, ve'eda b'neihem, and the witnesses are among them, ve'amr lahen, and you say to the group as a whole, mashbiani aleichem, I'm making you swear. Imatem yodim li eda shetavo v'tiduduni, that if you know testimony, you got to come and testify for me. So I might have thought that in that situation, I know that they're there. I know that A and B are in this group of 10 people, and I just happen to say it to all of the 10 people. Well, that's not going to be good enough. Yachol Yehu Chayavin. I might have thought that they'd be liable. Talmud Lomar, the who aid. This is specifically the witness. V'harei lo yichara edav. But he did not specify who specifically he was talking to. And so as a result, that's not going to work. Yachol afiu omar kol ha'omdim kan. Maybe if I were to say everybody in this place that's standing here should swear to me that I'm going to do it. So now I've said everybody. So I've made some kind of specificity. So I might have thought maybe even in that case, afilu omar kol ha'omdim kan, that would not work. Talmud lomar v'hu aid. It says v'hu aid v'harei yichad edav. He did specify. He told every single person in the room that they are going to be liable. And so as a result, a generic reference where you can't tell to whom he's referencing, that is not going to work. But if I say to everybody that I want each and every one of you to swear, well, then that has sufficient specificity, and the people who are lying will actually be liable. Okay, so fourth case. Amr l'shnayim mashbiani aleichem. I'm making you swear. Tanu Rabbanan. Again, the fourth case is where they don't actually know the testimony themselves, or they're not valid witnesses. So Tanu Rabbanan. Amr l'shnayim mashbiani aleichem. Ploni uploni. I'm making you two swear. As I said yesterday, we could say Ploni Uploni is a Daf Yomi coincidence because it all comes from the Ploni Almoni of the Rus story, and which we read on Tuesday. Imatem yodim li'edus, if you know testimony for me, shetavo with siyuduni, that you should come and testify for me, behain yodim lo'edus, and they actually do know the testimony, but aid mipi, they only know it from another witness, meaning they don't know it themselves, they didn't observe it. Osha haya echad mehen karavu pasul, or one of them is an invalid witness. The bottom line is that they're all invalid witnesses, because either they're invalid because their knowledge is not sufficient, or they're invalid because they are a relative or an otherwise person who's not a kosher witness. Yachol yehu chayav, and I might have thought that they'd still be liable. Talmud lomar im lo yagiv v'nasa avono. If he does not testify, he shall bear his iniquity. So beru'uyin lahagada kasam medaber. And what the point is that the Torah is telling us that you need to be fit to testify. So as a result, if you can't testify, then you can't violate this issue. So the last and our fifth of the situations in our Mishnah was shalach biyad abdo, if I send out my slave, or if Stan were to go on my behalf. Why he would do that, I don't know. But the bottom line is even if he were to do it, even though he is the defendant in the case, he goes and says, well, if you know testimony for David, come and testify. And if you don't, swear that you don't know. So again, that's not going to trigger liability. Tana Rabbanan, we cite a brisa that makes this exact point and explains the reasoning. Shalach biyad abdo, if I send a slave, Osha amar lehen nitba, or the defendant is the one who's talking to them and says, Mashbiani aleichem, I'm making you swear, shimatem yodim lo edus shetavo v'tiyuduhu, that if you know testimony for him, namely the claimant, you should come and testify for him. So yachol yehu chayav, and I might have thought that they would still be liable after all they're swearing falsely. Talmud lomar im lo yagiv v'nasa avono. The pasuk says, if he does not testify, he shall bear his iniquity. Well, my Talmudah. What's the proof? You just cited a pasuk. Yeah, but that pasuk doesn't say that it has to be me, the claimant, who goes out and tells them. So how do I get from that pasuk a proof? So Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Im lo yagid ksiv. If you have to look at how it was written in the Torah, the word lo is not written lamed vav, which would mean for him. And it's not written lamed aleph, which would mean not. And of course, here in this context, it does mean not, meaning it's written male. It's written with the vav in the middle. So why was it written male? So it means that you're supposed to understand it both ways. You're supposed to understand it the natural way, that meaning that if he does not testify, so then he's going to bear a sin. But imlo yagid v'nasau v'no. If you're not going to testify for him, the one who made the claim and made the request, that's the situation. V'im la'akar lo yagid patur. But if it's for somebody else that you don't testify for, well, then you're going to be exempt. So the bottom line is that word lo, which is written lamed vav aleph, is specifically written that way in order to tell us that the person who makes the request of the witnesses needs to be the claimant, and it's only for the claimant that we're saying that that's going to be the situation. Okay, so we've now proven the 5 cases, and we're ready for our next Mishnah. The next Mishnah details language that one can use to get someone to swear and be liable. Turns out that it's not just using the term, I'm making you swear, but rather, mashbiani alechem. So that's the classic one. Mitzavani alechem. I'm commanding you. Oserchem ani. I'm binding you. Hare elu chayavin. All of those kinds of languages are going to trigger liability. Now we're going to deal with in the Gemara, what's the full set of language? Meaning, why is it that these are liable? And what is that going to be sufficient? Now we're going to do what kind of reference to Hashem does there need to be in an oath? Because in general, when we say a valid oath, it needs to be in Hashem's name. Now, you're not allowed to do that for no reason, but the point is that when we have a valid oath, we're supposed to swear in the name of Hashem. So, b'shamayim uva'aretz, if you swear by heaven and earth, hare elu paturim, that's not in God's name, so you're going to be exempt. The Aleph Dalid, if you say Adoshem, then, but you say it in the formal way, so then that's going to be, or the yud K, or with a yud and then a hey, that's going to, meaning the simple understanding is that this is referring to the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God. So that would be, again, a valid way to swear. Bishakai, using the word, that name of God. Bitzvakot, using that name of God. Shakai means the Almighty. Tzvakot means the Lord of hosts. Bichanun, the compassionate. Virachum, the merciful. Be'erech apayim, the slow to anger. B'rav chesed, the abundantly kind. B'chol kinuyin, any kind of nickname for God is going to trigger the liability. Harei elu chayavim, you're going to be liable. So that's the story. Now, having referenced the whole situation of using Hashem's name, we're going to now go on a brief aside. Hamakala b'chulan chayav. If you use any of them to engage in blasphemy, the quote unquote blessing of God, meaning not the blessing of God, Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's what Rabbi Meir says. So if you engage in blasphemy using these names, that's sufficient to make you liable. And liability specifically, it says in Rashi, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down from where it says Masnisin in the Rashi, Chayav in the narrow lines, Chayav Misa, it's referring to the execution. The Chachamim Potrim, but the Chachamim say no, you have to use the specific name of God. Using the Kinuyim is not sufficient. Hamakal Aviv Imo B'chulan Chayav. Similarly, Rabbi Meir says that if you use any of these names to curse a parent, you're also going to be liable to the death penalty. The Chachamim Potrim, and again, the Chachamim say no, you're not. Hamakal Atzmo V'chaveru B'chulan over below Taset. But if you curse just some other person or yourself, you have violated a negative prohibition. Okay. So that is the brief aside on using these names for curses, because we happen to mention these names in connection with oaths. So back to the oath of testimony. Yaka Hashem Elokim. If I say to the witnesses that the Hashem will strike you if you don't testify for me, and then they swear we don't know the testimony. Or V'chein Yakchem Elokim. Or may Hashem God, or V'chein Yakchem Elokim, or like this, should God strike you if you don't testify for me. Zohi Allah Haksufa b'Torah. That is the kind of curse / oath that we are going to say is written in the Torah, and therefore is a valid form of asking people to swear, and will make them subject to the oath of testimony penalties if they swear falsely. Al Yakcha, if I say, listen, I want God not to strike you, so come and testify for me. Or God, God should not strike you if you come and testify for me. V'yivarechecha, or Hashem should bless you if you come and testify for me. V'yetivlecha, or Hashem should do good for you if you come and testify for me. Or Rabbi Meir Mechayev, Rabbi Meir says that in all those cases, you can derive the negative from the positive, that here I'm trying to bless you if you do come, so as a result, I'm trying to curse you if you don't come. And so as a result, that you would still be liable. But Chachamim Potrim, and the Chachamim say, no, we're not going to figure out the opposite from what you said. You just were encouraging. You weren't trying to get them to be subject to the oath of edut, of testimony. Okay, so now let's dig in or dive in to the situation of exactly what the claimant says when he says, I'm making you swear. So mashpia aleichem, my kamar. What is he actually saying? So Rav Yehuda haki kamar. Here's what he's saying. Mashpia ani aleichem b'shvua ha'amura b'Torah. When I use the language of mashpia, which is an oath language, I'm saying that you need to swear the oath that it's said in the Torah. Or mitzvah ani aleichem, when if I use the mitzvah language, it's saying I'm commanding you b'tzavah ha'amura b'Torah, with the command that's written in the Torah. Or serchem ani, or I am binding you b'isur ha'amur b'Torah, with the binding that is, the prohibition that is mentioned in the Torah. So that's what Rav Yehuda says. But Abaye asks a bomb question on it, and let's see what it is. Amrle Abaye Ella Hadad Tani Rabbi Chia. But 1 second, we have Rabbi Chia teaching the following in a brisa: Kovel Chemani, that I'm chaining you. Kovel Chem is a word. Actually, we say it every day. It's in Tehillim, Kuf Mem Tet, Bechavlei Barzel, with like fetters of iron. So the point is that I'm trying to handcuff you to the to testify for me. So hare elu chayavim. That language is sufficient language. But kova bel raisa miksiv. But is there any kind of language of chaining in the Torah where we could say that what I was really saying is kovel kovel chamani b'kovel hamura b'Torah? That I can't say that. It's not written in the Torah. Unlike mashbia, which is an oath, or tzava, a command, or isur, which is a prohibition, those are written in the Torah. But here we said that this language works also. So as a result, Abaye offers an alternative understanding. Elo amar Abaye hachikamar. Here's what it's saying: Mashbia ani aleichem b'shvua. I'm having you swear an oath. Mitzava ani aleichem b'shvua. Or I'm commanding you to make an oath. Or serchamani b'shvua, or I'm binding you to make an oath, or kovelchamani b'shvua, or I'm chaining you to make an oath. So the bottom line is that the original language of the mashpia, kovelcham, it's mitzaveh, or sercham, is all language of how I'm tying you to the oath. But at the end of the day, the other part of what I need to say when I talk to the witnesses has to reference an oath, because that way we know that we're talking about Shavuos HaEdus and not anything else. Okay, now the Gemara is going to go on an aside. It's going to talk about the names of God for really the rest of today's daf. So let's take a look. Ba'al dalad b'yud kei b'shakai b'tzvakot b'chanun v'rachum v'erech apayim v'rav chesed. So if you've used any of those kinds of languages, you'll be liable if you get the person to swear. L'meimra d'chanun v'rachum shemos ninhu. Does this seem to suggest that chanun and rachum are actual names of God? Or a minu? But listen to the following brisa, which suggests that they're not names that have holiness to them. Because there are names that you can refer to God with that can be erased, meaning that they don't have holiness. And there are names that cannot be erased. Here are the names that cannot be erased. Kagon Kel, Elokecha, Elokim, Elokechem, Ekeh, Asher Ekeh, Aleph Dalid, the Yud Kei, Shakai, Tzvakot. So those are all hare elu einim chakim. You can't erase those. Aval hagadol hagibor v'hanora hadir v'hechazak v'ha'amitz ha'izuz chanun v'rachum erech apayim v'rav chesed hare elu nimchakim. All of these you can erase. Now it's got to be that the Gemara is using rachum v'chanun just as an example, but Erech Apayim and Rav Chesed were also on this list, so clearly it's a question on those as well. It seems that those don't have any specific holiness. So Amar Abaye Masnisin b'mishahu chanun. Nah, our Mishnah is really saying that it's talking about the one who is compassionate, meaning that the usage of the term chanun means mishahu chanun, the one who is compassionate. And similarly, rachum means mishahu rachum, the one who is compassionate. Erech apayim means mishahu erech apayim, the one who is slow to anger, meaning that it all refers to God, and that we're being clear in that. Kemishahu rachum kamar, and as we turn to Lamed Hey Amabet, we say b'mishahu rachum. It's as if one's saying that by the one who is compassionate. So Amar le Rava asks a good question. Well, ihachi b'shamayim u'va'aretz nami. Well, 1 second. What about when we said that heaven and earth does not work in our Mishnah? The swearing by those does not make one liable. Doesn't it mean when we say heaven and earth, b'misha shamayim va'aretz shelo kamar? He's really trying to say that the one who owns the heavens and earth, and that's who you're swearing to. No, haki hashta, they're not comparable. Hasam, when it comes to the words Rachum v'Chanun and Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed, so then Kevan Deleka Midi Achrina de Ikre Rachum v'Chanun. There isn't another being who is called with a name of gracious and compassionate. So Vadai b'Mishu Chanan. So it's certainly talking about a situation where we're referring to the one who is gracious and the one who is Vadai b'Mishu Rachum Kamar, or the one who is compassionate. But Hacha, when you refer to heaven and earth, there is a noun, an object that has those names, and as a result, you're no longer saying heaven, that you're the one. You don't necessarily mean the one who owns heaven and earth. You could mean b'shamayim u'va'aretz kamer. You could mean heaven and earth literally, and not to Hashem's name. Okay, so we've now dealt with that, with the fact that yes, it is true that Rachum and Chanun are not directly names of God, but they are effectively names of God because they are character traits associated with Hashem that are that aren't also names of objects in the world. So Tanarabanan, Kasav Aleph Lamed Me Elokim. If you write the first two letters of Elokim, Yud K Me Hashem, or the Yud and the Hey from the word Hashem, from Yud K Vav K, Hareze Eino Nimchak. You can't erase them because you already wrote a sort of, even though you may not have intended to, you already wrote the name of God in those letters. And so as a result, that's not going to be sufficient. Shin Dalet Mishakai, but if you wrote the first two letters of the name Shakai, Aleph Dalet from Mei Adoshem, Tzadi Bei Mitzvakot. In all of those cases, Harei Zed Nimchak. Those you can erase. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Tzvakot Kulo Ne'emchak. You can actually erase the entire word of Tzvakot. Shelo Nikrat Tzvakot Ella Al Shem Yisrael. That the name Tzvakot is really a reference to all of Israel. Shenemar V'otzesi Es Tzivotzai Es Ami B'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I'm taking out my legions, my people, the children of Israel, from the land of Egypt. There's a pasuk in Shmod Perek Zayin pasuk Dali. So Amar Shmuel ain't halacha Rabbi Yossi, but the halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. The name Tzvakot also one should not erase if one writes the whole thing. Tanu Rabbanan Kol hatafel l'shem. If you have a prefix or a suffix, bein milafanav, whether it's a prefix, bein mila'akrav, whether it's a suffix, harei zed nimchak. You're allowed to erase it according to the Tanakama. Lefanav Kate. So what do I mean by a prefix? La Hashem lamed nimchak. If you write to Hashem, so then you can erase the lamed. Ba Hashem, a beis nimchak. If you if you write, in Hashem or by Hashem, so again the beis can be erased. Va Hashem vav nimchak, me Hashem mem nimchak, she Hashem shin nimchak, ha Hashem hey nimchak, ka Hashem kaf nimchak. So in all of those cases, whatever the letter was that you wrote in front, it's that letter doesn't gain holiness. La'acharav Kate. So what is it? What do we mean by a suffix? Elokei nu nun vav nimchak, because it's Elokeinu is just saying our God. So the nu is just to the reference us. So maybe we can erase that. Elokei hem nimchak, the end of them, their God. So the could be, maybe the there could be erased. Elokei chem, so your God, chem nimchak. The kaf and the mem at the end could be erased because the key word that is referring to God is the Elokei part. The others say, however, la'acharav eino nimchak. No, you cannot erase a suffix. Shekvar kitchu Hashem, because the name has already sanctified it. Meaning, when you write the name, that is going to give sanctification to the entire word. And so, as a result, unlike the letter at the beginning, which doesn't have the holiness of the name because the holiness of this name comes only later, the chem, hem, and nu all has the holiness of the name because the holy name came first. And so as a result, that's going to be, you're not going to be able to erase it. And Amar Rav Huna, halacha ke'acherim. The halacha is like the acherim. So it's important to know you can't erase the suffix of nu, hem, and chem in Elokeinu, Elokechem, and Elokehem. Okay, so Abraham. So now we're going to talk about, and now we're going to quote a long brisa that's going to be the rest of today. And this brisa is going to highlight that sometimes these names of God can refer to God, and sometimes these names of God can refer to non-godly beings. Like the name Adonai can mean, and I'm intending it to mean in this case, my master. Adoni is my master. So you can use that word if you're using it in a non-god, as written. You can use it if you use it in a non-godly situation. So Abraham. So let's take a look. So we'll skip the mnemonic, some parenthetical. Kol Shemos Hamurim B'Torah Ba'Abraham Kodesh. Every time we use a name of God with respect to Abraham, it refers to somebody, to Hashem, God's self. Chutz mizeh shehu, except for the following, where it's not referring to God. Shenemar Vayomar. And this again, well, I'll read it the way this position says. That is not, this name of God is not actually referring to God. Vayomer Adonai im namatzati chen beinecha. My master, if I find favor in your eyes. It's Abraham talking to the three angels. He doesn't know that they're angels, but he thinks that, and they're just people that are coming by, and he's talking to them, and he's asking them not to pass his home. So Chanina ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua, Chanina, the son of Rabbi Yoshua's brother, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Mishum Rabbi Elazar Hamodai Amrud. So they say in the name of Rabbi Elazar Hamodai, Avzeh Kodesh. No, really, this name is also holy, and it's really Vayomer Adoshem Im Namatzatzichen Beinecha. It's Abraham is talking to Hashem. And Kaman Azlaha de Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, and whose opinion is reflected by which Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Gedola Hachnasus Orchem Yoser Mehakabalas Pnei Shechina, that it's better to receive guests than to even engage with Hashem. Why? Kaman Ka'oza Azog. It's like the last pair, meaning what is Abraham telling to Hashem in this pasuk? If he's talking to Hashem, he's saying, Hashem, listen, I have guests. Please wait for me. I need to go welcome my guests. And God should wait, kivayachol, for Abraham. And so that shows how important it is that we welcome guests. So kol shemos ha'amurim belot lachol, and all the names that are said with respect to Lot are all not to Hashem. Chutz mizeh shehu kodesh, except for one, which is referencing to Hashem. Shenemar vayomer Lot aleihem. Lot is saying to them, the angels. Al na adoshem hine na matzah abdecha chen beinecha. Please know, Hashem. Now your servant has found grace in your eyes. Basically, trying to save God, his life. Misha yesh biyado lahamis ulahachayos. He's clearly talking to the being who has the power of life and death. Zakadosh Baruch Hu. That refers to Hashem. Kol shemas ha'amurim b'navos hakodesh. All the names that are used with navos. Navos was in Malachim Aleph, Parakov Aleph. There's the story of how King Achav wants Navos's land, and he refuses to sell it to him, and so he has him killed. In any event, the bottom line is that the names used in that story, they are all Hashem. They are all referencing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. B'micha chol. In the story in connection with Micha, this is the story in Shoftim, Perek Yud Zayin, and Perek Yud Chet. They are all not to Hashem. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, B'navos Kodesh, B'micha, Yeshmen Chol, B'yeshmen Kodesh. He disagrees with respect to Micha and says some of them are Aleph Lamed Chol. If they use the word Aleph, the name Aleph Lamed, it refers to strength, and it's not referring to divineness. Yud K Kodesh, but if it's Yud and then a Hey, so then that's a name that is going to be holy. Chutz mizeh she'Aleph Lamed b'hu Kodesh. That this is the one exception because it's Aleph Lamed, and ordinarily they're not divine, but this one is holy. Kol yemei hayot beis ha'elokim b'Shilo. All the days that the house of God was in Shiloh, that's referring to Hashem. Kol Shemos Hamuris Binyamin. So again, all the names that are referred to the hills of Binyamin. This is the story of the Pelegish Begiva, where again the Jewish people has essentially an internal war against the tribe of Binyamin. So all of them, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Chol, Rabbi Yoshua Omer Kodesh. Rabbi Eliezer says that they're not Hashem. Rabbi Yoshua says that they are. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer, but 1 second, they all. It looks like if all of them really refer to God, God is telling them that they should continue to do battle. And if it's God, why would God tell the Jewish people, the other tribes other than Binyamin, that they should do battle with Binyamin when, in fact, they're going to lose in the first two efforts of fighting with Binyamin? So Amar Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua says back, Misha Evtiach Asa. No, Hashem did what Hashem said. The imlo vichanu imlin imlonetzeach. It did the first two times that they asked God whether they should fight. They do not ask whether they're going to, and God does not tell them whether they're going to win or not. It was only in the last time where God says specifically that they're going to win. Hiskimu yadan. That's that he agreed with them. Shenemar ufinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron omeid lefanav b'yamim hahem lemor haosif od letzeis lemilchama im b'nei Binyamin achi im echdal. Again, should I continue in this battle against the children of Binyamin, my brother, or shall I cease? And Hashem says in response that Hashem is going to deliver them into their hands tomorrow. So as a result, that it can be that all of them are referring to God. Kol Shlomo Shamurim b'Shir HaShirim Kodesh. All the references to Shlomo in Shir HaShirim are referring to actually Hashem and not to the person Shlomo. Shir Lamisha HaShalom Lo. It's the song of the one to whom peace belongs, namely HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chutz mizeh, except for the following: Karmi shali lefanai ha'elef lecha Shlomo. That my vineyard is before me. 1,000 are for you, Shlomo. Shlomo l'nidei. That refers to Shlomo himself. Umasayim l'notrim as Piryo. And 200 are for those who guard the vineyard. So Rabbanan, that refers to the students. So to the rabbis. V'yesh omrim av zechel. And some say that even the following is divine. Is not divine. Hine mitaso Shlomo shishim, that Shlomo has 60 men, a bed with 60 men surrounding it. Avzeh v'lo miyabach. So by saying also this, you're saying that certainly the first one, the reference to the vineyard, is going to be a reference to non-divine and referring to Shlomo the person. Elahada Amar Shmuel, but what about what Shmuel says? Because Shmuel learns from that verse, which refers to 1,000 for Shlomo and 200 for the vineyard. He learns the following principle: Malchusa dekatla chad mishisa be'alma lo miansha. If you have a kingdom that puts into servitude and ends up killing 1/6 of the population, it's not going to be punished. How do I know? Shneamar karmi shali lefanai. My vineyard is before me. Ha'elef lecha Shlomo. 1,000 are for Shlomo. What's Shlomo? L'malchusa derakia. That refers to Hashem. Umasayim l'notrim es piryo. And 200 are for guarding the fruits. L'malchusa da'ara. That's for the earthly kingdom. So here, in this statement, Shmuel is clearly understanding the Elef L'Shlomo, the 1,000 for heaven, to mean that when you have a population and you need to guard something, you cannot, and collect an army, you cannot collect more than 1/6, because 200 out of 1,200 is 1/6. And so as a result, you need to make sure that you have the 1,000 men that are continuing to learn Torah, and only 200 are the ones that are taken out of the Beit Midrash in order to engage in the military pursuits or other pursuits on behalf of the king. So, but the problem is that nobody, we've heard, nobody, Shmuel, lo ketanakama, v'lo kiyesh omrim. Shmuel doesn't agree with anybody, and Shmuel is an Amora, not a Tana, so we need to find a Tana that agrees with him. Elahachi Kamar. So here's what we got to reread it. V'yesh omrim zeh kodesh. No, when the yesh omrim say that they are actually saying that this one, namely the reference to Shlomo in connection with the vineyard, it is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the only one where it's not divine is with the reference to the bed. And so as a result, Shmuel will say like the Yesh Omrim. Okay, let's finish up with now the same issue with Daniel, and then we'll be done for the day. All the kings that are referenced in Daniel are actually not divine, are not to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Except for the following one. Ant Malka Melech Malchaya Di Ela Kasha Maya Malchusa Chisna Visakba Vikara Yehevlach. That you, O king, the king of kings, who is the God of the heavens, has given you a strong kingdom, power, and honor. So it's the reference to the king of kings that is referencing God. So what Daniel is saying to Nebuchadnezzar, this is a speech by Daniel to Nebuchadnezzar, is he's saying, you, Nebuchadnezzar, the God, the King of Kings, who is the God of the heavens, has given you a strong kingdom, power, and honor. So that is what he is saying to him. But v'yesh omrim av zeh kodesh. No, but some say, you know what? Even the following is also a reference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenemar Mari'i Chalma L'Sanacha Ufishrei La'arach. That Mari'i, meaning my Lord, that I'm understanding this as to being to Hashem. So to Hashem, let the dream be upon your foes, and its interpretation on your enemies. So it's saying that Hashem should enable the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had be on the enemies of Nebuchadnezzar, or on God's enemies, and not to Nebuchadnezzar's enemies. So Laman Ka'amar, but who did Daniel address? Because if you think that he was addressing it to Nebuchadnezzar, then say my ninhu. What does it mean that the enemies are the enemies? Who are Nebuchadnezzar's enemies? Yisrael. It's the Jewish people. So Milat Kalayit Lahu Yisrael. Is Daniel causing a curse on the Jewish people? Because after all, he's saying that that Nebuchadnezzar's enemies should be subject to the bad things that happen in the dream. And so as a result, that's a curse, ends up being like a curse on the Jewish people. So how could the Tanakama say that this is a reference to, that the Lord there is a reference to Nebuchadnezzar? Doesn't it have to be to Hashem? Because if it's not to Hashem, and you're not saying that Hashem should cause God's own foes to have bad things happen to them, it ends up being that you're telling Nebuchadnezzar that his foes should have bad things happen to them, and that's the Jewish people. The Tanakama suffer, but the Tanakama says, you know what? No, Daniel is smart, and he understands that, you know what? Even Sone Yisrael, Ika Sone Ovde Kochavim Leika. Are you telling me that Nebuchadnezzar's only enemies were Jewish people? Of course not. And they had no non-Jewish enemies? Of course he had non-Jewish enemies. And so what Daniel's intention was to curse those non-Jewish enemies of Nebuchadnezzar. And so as a result, what we've done is we've taken the opportunity from the fact that our Mishnah referenced all these different names that are associated with God, and said, you know what? As we go through Tanakh, sometimes those names actually refer to God, sometimes those names do not, and we've gone through a series in this brisa, this very long brisa, to highlight with a couple of excerpts. The brisa, like for example, the last language was probably not part of the brisa; it was probably the Gemara asking the question. But the bottom line is that in general, that we had this long brisa that highlighted the distinction between some of the times that the names of God refer to Hashem, and sometimes where they may refer to a human being. So that brings us to the Gemara's discussion of how using various names of God to swear, and so not just the specific name, how one can use the various names of God to swear, and not just a specific name. But for that discussion, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Have a wonderful day.